Good evening, Mark Teran, your mortgage man since 1986. And tonight's topic is going to be about multi-generational home buying. And the reason why I chose this topic is someone recently was asking me, hey, Mark, what is it? Why do you do what you do? And, what is it that you provide to customers? And the conversation or the thoughts that came out really led to the multi-generational home buying process, and which I'll go over in a minute. But first off, what is multi-generational home buying? And basically, this is where you have multiple generations living under one roof. Maybe you have, parents and grandparents buying a home together, or parents with their children buying a home together, and they're living together in that home. So it's termed multi-generational home buying. And I'll just share a little bit about my experience. Everybody's experience is different, but mine maybe tells a little bit why I am so passionate about what I do and how I help people. So, and I wish I could tell you this is going to be short, but it's going to be a little bit of a story. Hang in there. Um, as a kid, I grew up with my grandma in Vacaville. So I guess in a way, there was a little multi-generational thing going there. My mom worked in the Bay Area down there in San Jose, and I lived with my grandma in Vacaville. My grandma was actually wheelchair bound. And so I was actually able to help her with tasks and stuff around the home. Um, Honestly, I got up in the middle of the night. I would empty her bedpan. I would give her her medication. I did a lot of helpful things. And my grandma did a lot of great things for me. As a kid, she was a retired school teacher. Um, and so she was really good with children. She was a great baker. Um, and always there. I came home from school, what normally would have been a latchkey kid, because often parents work, and my grandma was there. So we had a multi-generational thing going on where I was able to help my grandma. My grandma was able to provide a nice, stable home environment for me, and it was great. My grandma passed when I was about 12, and I moved to the Bay Area with my mom down in San Jose. And at the time, my mom was not able to afford a home. We were renters. And initially, I was in a studio apartment with her. And the economics of the situation were frustrating to say the least, I think, for her. And I'll just say we went through some real stressful times that were a bit traumatic for me. I grew up in apartments where I watched through the fence in the communal laundry area. I watched my sheets get ripped up by some folks because they needed to tend to their wounds. I watched my Christmas blanket or Christmas gift blanket that I received get stolen out of the community laundry. And as a little guy, it wasn't something that I was going to go, fight for. I didn't really want to get beat up or stabbed or whatever it was that was going to go on with these older teenagers, I think, or maybe young 20s. I don't know. I was 12 or 13 at the time. And I remember picking up groceries and, in the evening and walking home and having, a few kids come by on their bikes and take it straight out of my hands. And, with that, hey, what are you going to do about it? I ain't going to do shiitake. um, but where I'm going with that is, for me, the multi-generational thing became a an economic necessity at the time. I went to San Jose State down there in the Bay Area, and when I graduated, my mom sat me down. I've got two older brothers than I, quite spread apart. They're 17 and a half years older and 6.5 years older. So they were long gone. It was just mom and I. And I'll share that my mom had bought property up in the Donner Lake Truckee area. through owner financing. That's the only way that she could buy because normal lending guidelines would not let her qualify to buy a home. So she bought owner financed. So she sat me down on the day I graduated down there in San Jose. And she had already brought me into the loan business. I'd been in for a year doing a lot of, backup work and training and that sort of stuff. And the PC explanation of this is she said, "Hey, you want to go out and party and have fun and fool around like your brothers. I'm going to sink your ship. It's not happening. I'm not going to tolerate it. And but if you hang in here with me and take care of home base and make sure that I'm situated and you're situated, I'll see to it that you have multiple ships that you can sail. But rest assured, you take off now, your ship is sinking." And um, so I was a young kid anyway, and with the experiences I already had, I was kind of like, yes, I was planning on helping out anyway. And where I'm going with that, we were pretty much priced out of the Bay Area. And the Bay Area at the time, home prices were maybe 150 to 250,000. This is back in 1980. Well, that's probably like 89. Um, when I graduated from college. I started loans in 86 and did night school and all that fun sort of stuff. So in 89 is when I graduated, that's what prices were. And we couldn't afford to buy anything down there in the Bay Area. I began looking for, opportunities, and Sacramento was a much more affordable market at the time. And I remember telling my mom, we need to get out of here. We need to find a way to, get to a more affordable area. Literally, I was like every single day I would go by a out of town newspaper shop and I'd pick up their papers and I would look at jobs all over. I was looking for a way out of the Bay Area because there was no way I could see a future there. I had already been in lending for about 3 years. I'd qualified plenty of people. And I can tell you, and this is one of the things I really want to share tonight, is, today the topic is affordability and what's going to happen when rates improve and home prices are going to go up and are we going to have a housing crash and how unaffordable it is. And the young generation, they are so, hosed. And I want to tell you, I went to San Jose State. I read master thesis papers on the housing market back then. I remember even doing a speech in a speech class talking about it. Folks, we had the same problems then. We had affordability issues, and we have affordability issues today. Um, Here in Sacramento, they're kind of like they were in San Jose at the time. And if you're familiar with San Jose, when I left there in 1991, I remember thinking, it's not fair, it's not right. And I can tell you, I could stamp my little feet and I can clench my fists and I can scream and cry and do all the things that a frustrated person might want to do, but it doesn't change. And it's not going to change. It's affordability is a challenge. It was a challenge then. It's a challenge today. And so you find your way through it. In the Bay Area, I helped a lot of folks, and I remember going to certain houses, and we called them six packs. And a six pack was often a multi-generational home. And I often would say, well, these were the ethnicities like the Asians and the Indians and the Hispanics. And a lot of them didn't have high paying jobs. Some of them worked multiple jobs at restaurants, or they were on an assembly line in the manufacturing plants, but they banded together so that they could own a home and secure their financial future. And what I would see when I would go to their homes to take their applications, because that's what we did in those days, we made house calls. And you would go there and you would see the six set of shoes at the door because they didn't want to sully their carpets. And you would meet with them and often odd hours and multiple times because they worked many different shifts. But they all got together and they bought a home. And then 1 or 2 years later, they got some raises on their jobs, maybe some promotions, maybe finished up their schooling and got into a better career. And they elevated themselves. And guess what? They got together and they bought another home. Then several years later, they got together and they bought another home. And they secured the financial future of their generation, or generations, I should say. They banded together. And there's pros and cons of doing that. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. My situation, kind of like theirs, was, you know, economically driven, right? I wasn't going to be able to buy. When we moved up to Sacramento after a few years, my mom actually wound up becoming ill, had a open heart surgery, an aneurysm that took her out of the business. And um, but she did have some income from the rental property she had up in Tahoe. And individually, we couldn't really buy much on our own, but together we could get a reasonable house. And so I bought a home together with my mom for several reasons. I mean, come on. Many of us are Americanized. We want to go out and have our own lives and, do that sort of thing. But in this particular case, that's kind of what my thoughts were. But then my mom, like I said, had open heart surgery, and that kind of ended that. I wasn't going to abandon her. So we get to the reasons and the things we do for many different reasons. Mine was economically driven and also a health issue driven. And I want to share that it made a huge difference in my life, because if I hadn't done that, she wouldn't have been able to buy, and neither would I. And I can tell you that my future right now is financially secure because of the decisions that were made back then. And the same goes for a lot of the folks that I worked with in the Bay Area. But there are other reasons. Some cases people may buy together. Maybe it is about elder care. One of the newest topics today is ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And maybe we put one of those on a piece of property so that we can have a elder parent live there and we can take care of them. So there are multiple different reasons for why to do a multi-generational home. And let's talk about some of those pros. So let me bring that up. What are the benefits? Well, obviously, the one I've been talking about most here is the ability to maybe one, be able to buy a home, right? Or maybe even able to buy a better home, right? Because it makes it easier to qualify when you have multiple folks with income and hopefully good credit. And it's a huge aspect of it today. I mean, obviously, if you have a young couple, a husband and a wife, or, a gal and her significant other, and they're buying together, similar but different, right? And in today's market, honestly, it takes quite a bit to be able to afford the median home. You probably need an income of at least 120,000 to get in this game here in Sacramento. And I can tell you in 2018, I was talking to a real estate office, and I was really trying to impress upon these realtors that, hey, as a salesperson, you're not being salesy. You're doing your folks a service if you would talk to them about the benefits of home ownership. And if you need to get help from family, because a lot of times, like, I don't want to have family help, all the obligations, and maybe it's embarrassing and they're too proud. And what I wanted to share with them is my experience in San Jose. Because when I was down there and the home prices were what they were at that time, I had looked at it and said, hey, this isn't fair. It's not affordable. It doesn't make sense. It's got to change. Well, we all see how that worked out. If you go down and look at San Jose, you're looking at homes that, $1 to $2+ million to buy. And in 2018, I said, hey guys, this is coming here in Sacramento. What I loved most about moving here to Sacramento in 1991 was the fact that it was affordable and people with, fairly, median income jobs, if you will, they could afford a home even on their own sometimes. And if they lost their job, they could go replace it in 3 to 6 months and be happy and move on with life. And I said, hey, it's going to get more challenging. Prices are going to go up here, and you're going to have the have and the have nots. And I mean, that's what I see now. We've got affordability challenges. If you want to move forward, hoping for a housing crash, not realistic. Hoping for better rates that it's going to drop your price or your payments so it's affordable for you, not overly realistic, because as the rates come down, your home prices will likely move up and it'll still be challenging. I'm not saying there won't be little pockets of opportunity, because there will be. You just got to have your eye on that prize, but understand it's going to be a challenge. If you're in the tech industry and making buku bucks, more power to you. I'm speaking to those that maybe that's not the case. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that that's the situation. That was my situation, right? I know what it's like to come from a single parent household. I know what it's like to come from economic challenge, and like, how am I going to be able to move forward in life? And so consider helping out with family or having family help you out. It can make a difference in your financial future and your security. So number one, able to buy a better home. Number two, if you're living together, you've got shared expenses in that home. Three, you can have shared responsibilities with the chores and the maintenance tasks, right? Maybe that home you're buying, right, because you're trying to get a piece of something, it's going to need some love, some TLC, and some fix up. That's pretty common for a lot of folks. Um, in many cases, if you've got the grandparents maybe in the ADU, or if we bought a duplex and they're next door, or we've got in-law quarters, maybe they're there to help out the kids. And so that extra time that you have with family, right? It strengthens the family bonds, and there's quality time that can be had there. And of course, it's a built-in support system where maybe there's childcare being provided or elder care. When you have that elderly parent that's halfway across town and with traffic and work and responsibilities and kids, sometimes that's not really doable. But yet, if you have a home together, or you've got a home with an ADU or an in-laws quarters, well, then that's a huge benefit and it's a huge relief. Now, I realize that there are potential drawbacks. So let's talk about those a little bit, right? So privacy concerns. We've got more people under one roof. That can make challenges. Might have fights over the TV, might have fights over, noise and sound and how loud they're playing the radio, or even how warm or cold the house is being kept, right? Differences in lifestyles require compromise, and of course, they can lead to conflicts. Those wonderful folks in the Bay Area, I admire them, those six shoes at the door. I admire them for their, fortuitous to stick together and build their financial wealth. But I know it didn't come without sacrifice. I know that there were domestic issues, and some of them pretty significant. It's tough to live that close with people. It just is. Financial complications, right? Managing joint finances, who's responsible for what part of the mortgage payments and the utility bills. That can be complex, and it can put strain on relationships. And just bringing this to the forefront as things to think about. And then, of course, your resale considerations. Multi-generational homes can be more challenging when it comes time to sell to their unique nature, and perhaps the complexities involved with it. These are things to think about in advance if you decide to go that way. There are some folks, and I know this for a fact, they're like, hey, Mark Teran, you're a mortgage man. Ain't no way in HE double toothpicks or hell. There's no way in hell I'm going to do that. It's not going to happen. I would rather be destitute and homeless than buy with my so and so, my mom or my dad or whatever. I understand this is, just a discussion about the topic. For some people, it may be a way for them to improve themselves and they want to consider and know about. And I want you to know, you know, don't yeah, what do I want to say? Basically, don't feel less than for doing something like this because a lot of people do. I personally did, and it has brought me financial security, not without complications, not without some hardship, not without some sacrifice. All of that did happen too. But just sharing with you. Now, what are some tips for successful multi-generational living? Well, of course, communication is key, right? You need to talk about this stuff up front on how you want to handle it and probably have some regular discussions with your family, right? So you can address your concerns about what's going on and who's going to handle what in the home in regards to chores and the decisions that you're making. And of course, before you get that home, design for everyone. If you're building an ADU or maybe even modifying your existing home, what does that look like? So consider those home modifications and designs that cater to the different generational needs, right? If you've got older folks, maybe they need to be living on that main floor. If you have someone that's disabled that you're looking after, maybe it's going to be modified to be ADA, accessible for their needs. And, these things are things to look at and consider in advance. And I'll say to some degree, consider them. Right? This isn't rocket science, and please don't make it rocket science. Consider it, get it together, and then, as Nike says, just do it. Just do it. You hold back forever. You never buy if you're, accepting this as a process for you. I can tell you that won't get you anywhere. It's just get you further behind the eight ball. At some point, you got to pull together what you have. Yes, it's going to be probably complicated and tough for the folks that I'm addressing right now, but it will bring you a lot of benefits that we discussed earlier. Last tip is legal and financial planning, right? And so at some point you need to consult with, a legal, maybe an estate planning attorney, financial advisors to manage the property ownership and potential tax implications, especially if you have older folks that are maybe going to pass. That was the situation for me. I had a co-owned home with my mom and obviously much older than I was. And so, what happens when she dies? How do we handle all of that? These are important things to consult with professionals, and they are out there, and we can help you with that. Anyway, I hope this was a helpful topic for you. I love helping people get into home ownership because I see it as a pathway to financial security and stability, and that means everything to me. And when I'm talking to folks that maybe do not qualify for what they want today, my, whatever my gut, my soul is, I want to show them a path of how to get there. I don't want people locked out forever if this is something that they want to achieve. You're more than welcome to reach out to me at 916-768-6530 or email at mark.teran@apmortgage.com.